I knew I wanted to be a journalist right from high school as a teenager when we started the first journalism club in my high school. And it was interesting and fun. And so when I left high school and went to university, I started writing for a national newspaper. And as soon as I finished my undergraduate, I was admitted to the School of Journalism to pursue journalism as a career. And then I went to the Nation Media Group on my first internship, and after the internship I was offered a job as a reporter. And soon after that I was moved over to the sub-editor's desk, and I worked as a sub-editor, deputy sub-editor, chief sub-editor, and then I left Nation Media Group to join the Standard Group because they offered me a higher position of managing editor. Deputy managing editor first, which I did for just 1 year before I was promoted to managing editor. And at that time I became the first woman in Kenya to hold the position of managing editor for a daily newspaper. So after 3 years, I left the Standard Group and went to work with the United Nations as a communication specialist at UNICEF. In 2012, the Nation Media Group approached me and offered me the editorship of the East African, which I found exciting. I think for me, the biggest challenge for me as a senior woman in media right now is that there are very few of us, and we do not have a strong enough voice at the table. So from things as basic as when decisions are being made about who to promote, a lot of times I find myself being the lone voice that is speaking for the women, and it doesn't really seem to bother the people around me that it is wrong to sit in a room of 8 men and 1 woman, but it makes me really uncomfortable. And although now I have pretty much managed to raise some of my children to adults, but I know that there are challenges that face women as they're trying to raise families, and sometimes you feel like you must sacrifice one thing for the other. So many women often opt to sacrifice their careers to take up family roles. So that's another challenging issue, which I think if we all felt the same about it, would make the workplace a bit friendlier for women who are in certain positions in their lives, in certain stages of their lives. And this is not a permanent status, really. It's probably just 1 year where you need some accommodation, to have flexi time, to be with your children at the right time. And then after that, you can get into the grind of things. I think the first advice that I would give women in management is speak up. It's a lesson I picked up much later in my life, because I would go into a meeting and sometimes not speak at all, and then leave and feel maybe I should have said this, maybe I wasn't confident enough. So these days I have learned to speak up and to speak fast when there's an opportunity to speak, and not to let people to take up all the space so that your ideas completely get left out. And the other thing that I would advise women in management, particularly in media management, is you shouldn't go in wearing your womanhood around you, because I don't think my male colleagues come to work feeling I am a man going to work. They just really go in feeling I'm a journalist going to work, and that's how I've learned to work also. I sometimes sit into a room and it's until somebody mentions something that is really like feminine that I'll remember, oh, I'm a woman. Because I feel I'm an equal person on the table. I'm not there as a woman. I am there as a human being. So we need to stop always looking at our gender first before we look at why we are there. My biggest responsibility is really to drive the content of the newspaper that I publish. This means I have to plan the stories. I have to sit with my team and scan the region, look at what are the important issues and what is it we want to highlight. It's a weekly newspaper, so what is it that will be current enough 7 days from today, but also very important for the region, and then prioritize those issues. And then I have to ensure that once the stories have been assigned, there's somebody following through to ensure that all the writers will bring in their content, look at that content, give them feedback, improve it, and then look at how the stories are positioned. And on the production day, which is a Friday, my biggest role is to decide where the most important stories should be placed in the newspaper and on the website, and how we package the content so that it appeals to our readers, and it can drive our circulation figures. Circulation is pretty much a big issue right now because not so many people are reading the newspaper. So you still have to give people reason to actually go out and buy a newspaper by giving them content that is different from what is available on all the websites and that has insights that they will not get anywhere else. Everything is really important, and one of the things that I've learned as a manager is that as much as my training is really about producing great content, I still have to know a little more about advertising. I have to know about circulation and how we relate with each other. So, for example, when it comes to deadlines, I publish a newspaper in Nairobi, but it is transported by road to Uganda and to Tanzania, and it is airlifted to Rwanda and then sold in Kenya, in different parts of Kenya. I know that if I don't meet my editorial deadline and the paper misses its slot on the printing press, which has several other publications, it will not make it to those markets on time. And if it doesn't make it to the market on time, then my circulation suffers. And if my circulation suffers, then the advertising also suffers. So all these things are interlinked, and it's very important, therefore, that I observe my processes and what I'm in control of, making sure that first we start with the planning, it's well done, the stories come in on time, I edit it on time, the pages are well laid out on time, we have to go through all the revision stages and still put out the newspaper on time. We do both, actually, because we are a weekly paper, but also because of the opportunities available online to put out content every time. So we look at the short-term stories, which are what is going on, and we put that online. Put it out on Twitter, on other social media platforms, and then we look at what are we doing for the week. So we look at the long analytical pieces that we're developing, but we also have to plan long-term, looking at projects that we can work on and which would be, shall we say, earth-breaking, earth-shattering, that will make a difference. So let's say right now we are looking at something like maternal mortality in East Africa. That is not something that you can just put together in 1 week, because there are so many strands to it, and you want to use all your writers in the different countries to put together a forceful report. So we do both long-term and short-term. Again, we realize that our audiences, before we just had the people who bought the newspaper and read it, but now we realize that our audiences are not only on the print, most of the time they're online. We know the importance of video. We know the importance of the Facebook, Twitter, because that's where the people connect with us. So we have a team of writers, and we've had to retrain them to stop looking at themselves as just writers for the print, to know that you first put out a tweet, then you do a small brief which we send out as a news alert if there's a breaking story on the phone, and then you do a longer piece for the website, and you do a much more analytical story that brings in interviews and explanations and more data. And then we have a team of creative people that help us to do the graphics, to illustrate our stories, and we get in the videos so that it's a multimedia story in the long run. First of all, I don't have just one newsroom, so communication is very important for us because we have teams in all these countries, and we have to make sure that we're on the same page at any one time. So it means being ready to send messages using the fastest means possible. If something is breaking in Uganda, I expect that my bureau chief in Uganda will first WhatsApp me and just let me know this is happening, so that we already start planning together. So communication is really fundamental to our work. The email system, make sure we're together, teleconferencing at some point when it's important. And then there's always the physical communication where I have to travel to just maintain that close physical contact also with the teams. So it's crucial for our work. I learned early. When I came to be the managing editor of the East African, on Monday when we meet to plan, before we can start planning, we look at the newspaper that we produced the previous week and analyze it and see whether it was a good paper, whether we had some stories that stood out, whether we made goofs. And I noticed that only a few people would contribute. So one of the things that I started to do, I insisted that everybody must say something. And so one of the ways I manage my meetings is by insisting that everybody gets a chance to talk, and it can be as short as half a minute, but everybody must speak. And I think this helps to bring out the people who might be a bit reserved, but they still have ideas. And I've seen people actually come out and give their ideas, who before that would just sit back and leave the noisy ones to speak. So that's one of the things that I think is critical. If you're a manager, that you give everybody a chance and look out for the more quiet people. I think you need to understand the scope of your assignment, but also you need to learn how to work in a business environment. It is no longer the good old days where you could just only think as a journalist, but you have to keep thinking about what am I doing and how is it impacting the rest of the organization, because that management role asks of you to step out of your comfort zone of just creating content. You do your bit and create the content, but you must know how that content is going to contribute to the overall growth of the organization that you're working for. And then also, I always feel if you're a newsroom manager, you really must have a sense of duty to your society. So you must be looking at what impact is this going to have on society? Am I creating positive impact on society or negative impact?